They say wild animals run from humans, but what if one walked straight to your front door, begging for help? Most people think they understand nature. They think the wild is cold, untouchable, driven only by instinct. But the truth? Nature remembers kindness better than most humans do, and sometimes it knocks, no, limps, right up to our doorstep with a silent cry that rewrites everything we thought we knew about survival. This isn't just one of those ordinary animal stories. It's a raw, heartbreaking lesson in love, loss, and legacy. You're about to witness something so rare, so emotionally complex, it challenges our beliefs about wildlife and the human heart. A story where a dying mother bear doesn't fight, but trusts. A ranger who doesn't run, but listens. And a cub who carries more than his mother's blood. He carries her final wish. If you've ever believed that rescue animals only exist in shelters, or that overcoming stories belong only to people, this one's going to change you. And once you hear what that mother left behind, you won't look at the forest the same way again. High up in the mountains, where silence speaks louder than words, Vivian James had learned to read the language of the wild. But nothing prepared her for that morning. A grizzly bear, majestic and worn, appeared dragging what looked like a heavy bag, not with fury or force, but with a heartbreaking kind of gentleness. Inside that bag, a cub, barely breathing. This wasn't one of those ordinary animal stories you hear about in passing. This was instinct colliding with desperation, and a mother willing to break every natural rule to protect her own. Wildlife usually avoids humans like the plague, but this bear, she crossed the line, not to attack, but to ask. A silent plea more human than most humans manage. Vivian stood frozen, not from fear, but from awe. Imagine a creature known for its strength, now trembling, seeking help. It's the kind of rescue that doesn't start with sirens. It starts with empathy. People often think survival is just tooth and claw, but sometimes it's knowing when to surrender. That bear surrendered her pride for her cub's chance. And here's where it gets deeper, because we all carry a version of that bag, don't we? A burden, a hope, a loved one we'd do anything to save, whether it's a sick dog, a struggling friend, or even your own inner child. You know what it means to stand in the cold and ask for help. These are the real overcoming stories where ego steps aside and love leads. As Vivian knelt to check the cub, the mother didn't flinch. No growl, no charge, just a gaze full of raw trust. Trust isn't given easily in the wild, especially not from a grizzly. But there it was. And as the snow began to fall around them, a strange warmth filled the space between human and beast, one that was only just beginning to grow. Vivian didn't know the first thing about raising a grizzly cub, but she knew enough about compassion to act anyway. She wrapped the little one, Ash as she'd later name him, in a blanket that still smelled like her late dog. It wasn't science, it was instinct, love, and the same kind of gut feeling that sparks the most unforgettable rescue animals' stories. Sometimes love shows up in fur and silence. She fed him with trembling hands, mixing warm goat milk and honey, the way she remembered from a wildlife documentary. Ash was weak, but every blink, every breath was a tiny victory. Out there in the woods, the mother, bear lingered, watching, waiting, not with suspicion, but with hope. That kind of trust doesn't just happen. It's the core of every great rescue. Someone believes before the healing begins. Vivian started talking to Ash like he was her own. Funny how humans do that, fill empty rooms with voice when we're scared. And it worked. Ash responded, slowly but surely, to the rhythm of kindness. Meanwhile, the mother bear remained near, silent as snowfall, making sure her cub was safe. This was a wildlife moment no camera crew could ever fake. It's wild how fast bonds can grow when fear steps aside. And don't be fooled, Vivian was scared. But she leaned in anyway. It's the same leap you take when you adopt a rescue animal with a troubled past, or offer someone a second chance. You don't always get instructions. You just get a heartbeat and the hope that it's enough. And sometimes it is. Ash's eyes grew brighter each day, and Vivian's soul got a little lighter too. She wasn't just healing a cub, something in her was being restored. That's the magic of true overcoming stories. The rescuer ends up rescued too. And while the snow kept falling and the mother bear kept watching, none of them realized that a goodbye was quietly approaching. The storm rolled in without warning, snow slashing sideways, wind howling like an old ghost. Vivian had just finished placing another log on the fire when she heard it, a low thump against the wooden porch. Ash stirred from his blanket, ears perked, as if he already knew. There she was, the mother bear covered in frost, standing like a statue carved from memory. She didn't growl, didn't approach. She just stood there, soaked in snow and silence, with eyes locked on the window where her cub sat. In that frozen stare there was no blame, no fear, just a quiet resignation that broke something open inside Vivian. Some moments in wildlife, especially in animal stories like this, aren't loud. They're just achingly honest. Ash stepped toward the door. No hesitation. Vivian opened it slowly, unsure what might happen. But the mother didn't move. She simply watched, her massive frame shaking just slightly. Ash chirped, a tiny, soft sound, and for a heartbeat the air stopped. In stories of rescue animals, we often talk about the savior. But here, the mother was the hero all along. There's a kind of bravery we don't talk about enough, the courage to let go. The wild teaches this in brutal, beautiful ways. That bear stood there long enough. For a farewell no words could ever hold. Then, with one last glance, she turned and vanished into the white. And just like that, Ash's world shifted again. But this time, he didn't collapse. He stood. Vivian stayed on the porch long after the bear was gone. Snow collecting on her shoulders, fire crackling inside, and a single question echoing in her chest. Why does love so often look like loss? But she'd come to understand, rescue stories aren't always about saving. Sometimes they're about accepting. And deep in those woods, something was quietly ending, and something else just as powerful was about to begin. Days passed, and Ash grew quieter. Not in sadness, but in thought. Vivian had seen it before in wildlife, that internal pause animals take when instinct is waking up. Then one morning, drawn by something unseen, Ash padded into the woods, tail low, steps careful. Vivian followed. No leash, no call, just trust. What they found beneath the trees brought her to her knees. There, nestled beneath a fallen pine, was the body of the mother bear. Peaceful, undisturbed, as if the forest had wrapped her in silence to honor what she gave. Ash didn't cry. He simply sat beside her, head bowed, not in grief, but in understanding. In rescue stories, we often cheer for the survivors, but the ones who give everything, they deserve reverence. Vivian knelt beside the cub. Her hands trembled, but she stayed still, letting the moment be what it was. This was no tragedy. It was the end of a promise. That mother bear had offered her life so her cub could have a second chance. And now, as Ash nuzzled gently against his mother one last time, it was as if a chapter had been written by something greater than either human or beast. Sometimes, the wild gives us lessons that books never will. If you've ever felt like you were giving everything for someone who might never understand, think of her. Think of this grizzly, whose love crossed species, logic, and even survival instinct. These overcoming stories aren't just emotional. They're blueprints, proof that real strength is quiet, selfless, and rooted in love. As Ash walked back toward Vivian, something about him had shifted. Not just physically, though he was stronger, but in presence. He didn't look back. Because in the animal world, trust is shown in forward motion. Rescue animals like Ash carry legacy in their stride. And what came next wasn't just survival. It was the unfolding of something ancient, something wild, and something deeply human. Spring didn't just arrive, it exploded. The mountain thawed, and with it, life surged back like a symphony. Ash, now steady on his feet, walked beside Vivian like a shadow made of fur and instinct. He wasn't the fragile cub left at a ranger station anymore. He was a creature of the wild, shaped by survival, love, and the invisible thread that ties all great animal stories together. Vivian often found herself talking to Ash, not expecting answers, but somehow feeling heard. That's the strange magic of wildlife. It listens in silence, but it always remembers. Ash would pause on walks, nose twitching, ears alert to things no human could hear. And one day, in that golden quiet of late afternoon, Vivian noticed him stop and look up. There, across the trees, stood another bear. Not the mother, not a threat, just a presence, large, calm, and still. The kind of moment you don't interrupt. Maybe it was a sibling, maybe not. But Ash didn't growl, he didn't run. He looked, then walked on. And Vivian knew. The wild had acknowledged the bond. When you return something to nature with love, sometimes it leaves a mark that echoes back in surprising ways. Think about it. How many rescue animals carry more than just scars? They carry stories, lessons, proof that kindness isn't weakness. It's an instinct we share with the very creatures we think we're so different from. Whether you're adopting a pet, planting a tree, or helping someone who can never repay you, nature remembers, it watches, and sometimes it gives back. Vivian didn't need a thank you, but that silent moment between Ash and the stranger in the woods, that was one. These overcoming stories don't always end in applause. Sometimes they end in a quiet nod from the forest. A nod that says you did right. And in a world that often feels like it's forgotten how to listen, that might be the greatest gift of all. Now tell me, if a wild grizzly can trust a human with her most precious gift, what's really stopping you from trusting life a little more? Too often we're taught to keep our guard up, to expect the worst. But maybe strength isn't just about surviving. Maybe it's about surrendering to the right kind of connection. Whether you're rescuing a lost soul, healing from something unseen, or simply learning to love again, nature has a way of teaching us exactly what we need, if we just pay attention. The world is full of rescue animals, but sometimes we're the ones in need of rescue. So what would happen if you let your instincts soften just for a moment? What if you dared to believe that love can echo through the trees, that kindness does come back? If this story touched something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment below what this made you feel. And hey, if you want more stories like this, more wild truths wrapped in fur and emotion, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and come walk with us through the forest again.